Welcome to the Heartification podcast, where I interview people on how art has affected their lives and what it means to them. Art has a very special place in my life. It not only makes me feel happy, but it allows me to make others feel special. This podcast is all about how art has made an impact on others' lives, for all ages, all backgrounds, and all walks of life. You can find more about this podcast guest in my show notes. Without further ado, let's welcome my next guest. He is a negotiations trainer, author, and speaker. Please welcome my next guest, Paul Nadeau.
Hello, Avni. What a pleasure to be here with you today.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. So the first question I always ask is, how do you define art?
Okay. So how do I define art? Art is an expression of oneself, and it's drawn from a number of experiences, personal experiences that we have internalized that need to be poured out into something. It could be writing, it could be painting, it could be sketching, it could be singing, it could be acting. There are so many expressions of wonderful art that without it, I can't imagine a world without the expression of art. Art adds value and quality to our life. What it means to me is it creates a feeling within me that either I love or I question. And it's nice to be able to feel this gamut of different experiences when you watch a live performance. For example, a live theater performance or a live singing performance, or even listening to it on the radio or watching it at the movies, and then maybe going to an art gallery and seeing this beautiful art and imagining, how does that feel to me? And we know some art, we're going to look at it and go, I don't know what this is about. You know, all these little whatever. And you're going to go, I don't know what that is. But then others they're going to speak to you. And when you read something, maybe it's a piece of poetry, maybe it's a story, and it just speaks to you on so many different levels. So it really is an expression that comes from the artist to share with the world, or to share with an audience. And that audience may be one person, two people, maybe him or herself. Maybe their art is created only for themselves, but it needed to come out of their body into something. And so that would be my definition, or my view on it.
Yeah, I love that. And, my definition is like exactly the same thing. Any way you're able to express yourself and, let out your emotions. And as you're saying, kind of put it on to something, if it's like on a paper, if you like writing, onto a canvas or into a dance. There's so many things can be art. And I think sometimes we just need to just express ourselves instead of keeping all of our emotions inside. We just need to let it all go and just let it all out, and it'll make us feel much better. And art can be a very helpful tool for a lot of people. It's just like their little friend that they can go to, that they can just pour their heart out.
I love what you just said, Avni, because you're so right. If there are any dancers in your audience, or people who think that they want to dance, what's stopping you from starting to dance, or starting to sing, or starting to write, or starting to write poetry, whatever it is? If it's inside you, let it out. It's going to be better outside than it is on the inside.
Yeah, definitely. And, you don't have to go show it to the world. You can dance just for yourself, as you were saying.
Well, I do. You know what? I got the music going. And sometimes if I'm feeling a little bit blue, which sometimes we all are, I just decide that I'm going to start dancing. And I dance like nobody's watching, because nobody is. And it's all right. And even if they saw me, they'd think, there's crazy Paul. And it's okay. You know what? Because I'm living the experience that I'm feeling at the time. And it feels so good to release. And art is a form of release as well. Sometimes it's a form of therapy. And it really helps the mental condition to be able to express yourself in these different ways.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. And what art forms are you exposed to?
Oh, so many. I myself, I've done a lot of acting, and I still do. And I first started acting on stage, and then from stage in community theater into film and television. So I absolutely love that expression of art. I also sing, and I'm not a bad singer. I'm karaoke, but not bad. I can accompany people. I don't know how to play the guitar yet because I haven't really applied myself. That's shame on me. Love to express myself by singing. I am a writer. I love to write, and my writing has been really therapeutic for me as well. And I write about things that mean something to me and that I know will mean something to some readers, not all readers, but some readers. And that's just good enough for me. I draw, and I haven't drawn in years, but I was a really good drawer, and I could do these pencil sketches that were quite amazing. And that's a form of art that hasn't come out of me in a long time. It's okay because I have others that have taken its place and it's not gone. It's just there and it hasn't been exercised. Love to go to an art gallery and to watch, even it doesn't have to be paintings or sketches. It could be somebody who's put something together, have created a statue or an expression that is made out of blocks or whatever. And you're looking at that going, wow, that is really beautiful. When I see beauty in art, which there's so much of, it just gives me that warm feeling that we all need to access. We need those warm feelings. So I have so many different forms of art, and I'm not finished, Avni. I'm not finished. I mean, I go from one thing to another and I say, okay, what can I do now? And how can I express myself now? I look at myself not as really an intellectual individual. I look at myself as an artistic individual because I know that there are different personalities. And somebody asked me, what do you categorize yourself as? I say, I'm an artist. I'm artistic. And I express myself through many means of arts. I sing. I don't dance well, but I dance. But I do act and I do all these different expressions of art. And so I'm artistic.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you call yourself an artist because when I used to think of artists, I used to think, oh, like a painter or something. But art is everywhere in everything. And anything can be an art as long as someone has poured their heart into it and designed it. Like this computer I'm looking at is an art. Someone had to design this computer. So everything around us is an art. So everybody is an artist. And I love how you say that you're an artist.
Well, thank you. And I'm looking right behind you, and I don't know whether this is going to be a video podcast or an audio podcast, but I just want to point out to all your listeners, number one, how amazing of an interview you are so far. But behind you, you've got 4 paintings on the wall. And those are expressions of art. And I've been looking at them as I've been looking at you, and they're lovely. So,
thank you.
Yes, art is everywhere. It is in the eye of the beholder to behold what is presented to you. You can choose to look at it as an object, or you can choose to look at it as a breathing, living form of expression that somebody put into it. And when we look at it, it's like, wow, look, as you said, this computer, this design, this pleasing design that actually serves a purpose. Now, if you look at a painting on a wall, does it serve a purpose? Oh, yeah, it does serve a purpose because it accesses those recesses in your mind, and it just brings something out. So it serves a purpose of enjoyment and fulfillment and peace in some situations. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with you. And how do you use creativity in what you do?
How do I, sorry?
How do you use creativity in what you do?
Oh, I use it in so many different ways. Recently, what I've been doing is I have written a film script. It is a television series. And so I've used this to get a message across because I have this story. It's a story that I want to bring to the world. So I use my words to create a script, and then to take this script, this living thing that can be opened into and brought into this blossoming experience. I'll bring that to different people to say, bring this to life. And so that's one way in which I express myself through my writing of scripts. I'm also writing my 4th book, and I love writing my book because my book is not a fictional book. It's a self-help book, but it helps me to put all these thoughts and ideas and to bring them to life to who may read it and who may resonate with what I do. When I sing, I am bringing my voice, my tonality, my expression, how I sing the song, how I feel the song to people in the audience. And it resonates, not with everybody, but with many people. And they take a moment to say, I'm better for having heard this. So I express myself in so many different ways. And like I said a little bit earlier, Avni, I am just in the process of creating so many things. And it's just a great feeling for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love how you talked about, a song can resonate with different people. It may connect with different people. It may not connect with other people. And I think the really cool thing about art is if you got a bunch of people together and made them look at a painting, everybody would interpret it a different way based on their past experiences. So the same thing with songs, people would interpret it or connect with it in a different way. And I think it's the same for all forms of art, which is really amazing.
It really is. And it's like personal tastes as well, because personal tastes in art come into question as well, or into the reality of things. Because I may like hamburgers. You might not like hamburgers. You might like really salty fish, and I hate salty fish. That kind of stuff. And so it's personal taste. It's like, hey, do you like this piece of art? Doesn't do anything for me. How about this one? Oh, I love that one. Oh, I don't like that. It's okay. As you said, it's from our personal experiences and our personal tastes. And who knows where there's so many things that come into play in how we develop these likes and these dislikes, right?
Yeah.
Because we're all unique people. And so from our unique experiences, we'll have unique perspectives. And I love what you said about getting a bunch of people together and everybody's going to have this different opinion because we're different people.
Yeah, definitely. And being a successful actor means you must be creative in your role. So how have you used this in the roles that you have played?
Life is one great big, it is a stage. Life is a stage. So we're always acting in some form or another. When I'm on stage, I like to really feel the character that I play. And so I want to know as much about that character's life. I want to know their backstory. So if I'm playing the part of a villain or a detective or a father, who is the villain? Who is the detective? Who is the father? What experiences did they have? And how is it that they ended up in this particular situation at this particular moment? Can you feel and step into their shoes? Because if you can't, then you can't deliver a believable performance. And I know some very accomplished actors. In fact, one of my friends is a big Hollywood star, and he is amazing in every role that I've seen him in. He's been in about 250 movies and television shows. He's big. And when I watch him, you believe that he is the person that he says he is or that he is playing. So immerse yourself totally in that character, become that character. And we've heard major actors say, it was so hard for me to release from that character because I became that character. So when we look at a wonderful performance on film or on stage or on television, whatever, and we see somebody who's pouring their heart out, or they're playing the part of a depressed and a tormented individual, they're feeling that. They're feeling that. Can you imagine what it would be like to get into that role so much that you are feeling the anguish and torture that they're feeling? Because when they're feeling it on stage or for film, and it resonates with you and you're going, wow, you don't look at that person being an actor. You look at that person being a person going through that experience. So for the actor or actress, once they're done, they have to disassociate from that character. And it's not an easy job to get back to who you really are without being affected by the role that you just played. And so I have such an appreciation for these wonderful actors and actresses who live the experience so that I can go and really admire the film or love the film that I just saw and say, wow, how many hours did it take? and how much dedication did it take to step into those shoes. So it's really, truly an amazing experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think how you were saying with the film, if you actually connect with the character will connect with the viewers. When you're watching a movie, you don't want it to seem, I think like when it's boring, it's when the acting's not very good. You can't connect with the character. You can't really sense what they're feeling and what's going inside their mind. But when the actor does like a fantastic job, connects with the character, you can connect with the character as well.
You can, and I really like what you just said. And it reminds me, and what you did just now is you reminded me of something that I think is worth mentioning here, is that when I was doing community theater, stage theater, I did a number of wonderful plays, like really good plays. And I always picked the roles that I resonated with. I didn't pick a small role just to be on stage. I wanted a role that spoke to me and that I could deliver. And when I had the audience come, I had a number of people who would come to see the performance that I knew personally, family members and friends. They would always buy a ticket to support you, right? And if you did bad, well, I don't believe I did, but if you did bad, they'd say, oh, well, that was interesting, and they wouldn't tell you the real truth. But here's the greatest compliment an actor can get. And I remember being on stage and the audience is sitting down. They're getting ready to watch the play, and the curtains open, and all of a sudden the action starts, and then you come on stage, and everybody who knows you is sitting there going, there's Avni. Okay, yeah, I know her. Okay, I came to see her, and yeah, there she is. And oh, look at those lines she's delivering, and look how she's doing. And then all of a sudden, you're no longer Avni. You're Mary, or you're the person that you portrayed, and they forget that they came to see you, because you stole their heart in that role that you played. And afterwards they go, I first looked at you, Avni, or you, Paul. And I said, there's Paul, or there's Avni. But after 2 or 3 minutes, I believed you were the character. I totally immersed myself in what you were doing. That's the greatest. It's like, I know that actor. Wait a minute. No, I know that role, that person. You were that person for me. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. It's awesome when you can connect with the character. Like, I love that when you're watching a movie and you actually can kind of feel what they're feeling, or you kind of can feel what's going on in that scene.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful thing, because you don't look at that, oh, this is my favorite actor, so-and-so. You're going, oh my goodness, this is the role. This is the person. They're playing that villain, or they're playing that lover, or they're playing whatever. And you're going, wow, I believe that they are that person, right?
Yeah.
Because
definitely.
when we look, I don't know who your favorite actors are, but you've probably seen your favorite actors in several different films, but you don't look at them as the actor. That's not Ben Affleck. That's Batman, or that's, this person, or that's, you actually believe that they're the character that they portray. Then you'll talk about their name. But at the time you're watching it, it's not Ben Affleck that you're watching, or it's not Jennifer Lopez that you're watching, or whoever, Meryl Streep. It's like that character. Then you say, oh, Meryl Streep played this role. And oh, wow, was she ever good in it? Because you believed it.
Yeah, definitely. It's really amazing how movies can be like, I don't know, you can just connect with them and it feels like you're there.
It does, yeah.
And I see writing as an art form. So do you feel you were able to express yourself while writing your book?
Yes, I do. And Avni, I never set out to write a book. Never set out. It wasn't one of the things that I wanted to do. I have a very interesting background and history, and I've lived some amazing Hollywood blockbuster experiences. I have. It's just my life seems to draw these wonderful experiences, and sometimes very dangerous experiences. So I would be sitting around with friends and I'd say, oh yeah, well, this is what happened to me at work. And I would tell a story. And for me, it's like, I'm just going to work. Other people, when they hear these stories, they go, what? You were attacked by a terrorist, or you spoke to a terrorist and you talked him off a plane, or you did. And I'm thinking, yeah, doesn't everybody do that? Because it's my experience, right? So they said, Paul, you got to write a book. You got to write a book. And I thought, I don't want to write a book. What am I going to write a book about? I don't want to write a book. And I kept hearing this whisper. And for anybody listening, if you have those little whispers in your ears that say, write a book, draw something, paint something, if those whispers keep coming to you, listen to them, because they will leave if you don't listen to them. So I found myself in a space in my life where I had some time in my hands. This was back in 2013, I think it was. And I was sitting in between jobs, and I had retired from the police department, and people had told me, got to write a book, got to write a book. Never was thinking about it. Then all of a sudden, this whisper came back to me because I had some time in my hands, and it said, write the book, write the book. And I thought, I think I have to write a book. So I listened to the whisper, and I thought, well, where do I start? I have no idea how to write a book. So what I did is I went to a bookstore and I picked up a book on how to write a book. And so I started reading it, and I thought I knew it all. I read about 40 pages, and then I put it down and I started writing. Turns out I didn't know everything about writing a book, because I should have read the rest of the book that told me about chapters and subchapters and all this. It took me about 2 years to create this book. And it was an expression. I didn't know what I was going to write about, but things started to pour out of me. My past experiences and the experiences that I'd had with victims of crime and all kinds of things. It became a self-help book. And at first I didn't know. I had no plan, no clue. The words just came out of me. And then the stories came out of me. And then I looked at it and I said, I wrote a book. I wrote a book. And so I ended up publishing that book, self-publishing. And HarperCollins Canada, one of the biggest publishing companies in the world, they bought a copy of that book and they decided to publish it across the world. So it was really a validation that when you hear those whispers, make sure that you follow up on them. But the expression for me of pouring out those words onto paper was therapeutic, because I was dealing with some of the things that I had dealt with in the past that were perhaps unresolved. And I was putting them into thoughts and helping people to deal with what they may be experiencing. So it was very therapeutic for me, Avni.
Yeah, that's awesome. Art can, like I said before, it can be your little friend that you can go to when you're going through difficult situations or difficult times.
It can, and it certainly is, because some of the greatest artists in the world everybody's got a story. Everybody has got a story. Not everybody's life is perfect. In fact, I'm going to tell you something. Nobody's life is perfect. And some people's lives are tougher than other people's. And some of the greatest artists and performers in our world have been those people who have experienced these things and dealt with them. And that's why we hear a song that just speaks and go, wow, that speaks to my heart. They had their heart broken, and this is how they felt. I feel that way. Or when I read a story and I go, wow, what a beautiful story. It brings tears to my eyes. You're feeling what they're feeling. And it's just a beautiful expression of intuition, whatever it is. You just bring this out onto paper or into your live performances, whatever. It's just absolutely beautiful. I love art.
Yeah, me too. And do you see speaking as an art form? And if so, why?
I do. Again, I'm a motivational and keynote speaker. And let me rephrase that. The answer is, it is if you wish it to be. And I'm going to expand it on that. Is it an art form? It is, because it can bring such value to the listeners. It is a performance. It is getting a message across to your audience. The way in which you approach it, if you approach it with your heart, meaning I'm going to speak to my audience from my heart, not give them just a flat line, like monotone story. No, I'm going to deliver my message from my heart so you can experience the things that I'm talking about, or you can learn from what I'm talking about. That's an art form. That is it. But if you just memorize a script and you go out and you're like, hello, everyone, I'm here to talk to you about climate control. And I want to talk about the importance of climate control. Then you're going to lose your audience. There's no art in that. There's no expression in that. And I'd rather fall asleep or just get up and leave. So it is how you present what it is to the world that matters. That's when it can become art. Art is intention. It is the intention of bringing something of value to your audience, to your world, to your listeners, to your readers, to whoever.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. And I totally agree. And it's the same thing how in the movies, if you're going to sound like a robot somehow, like a robot, no one's going to connect with you. They're just going to be like, oh, this is boring. When is this person going to be done speaking? But if you put your emotions into it and you connect with people, then they'll be listening and be like, wow, this is amazing. I want to hear more.
Yeah. And we have so many great television series right now. All you need to do is go to Amazon or Netflix or Apple and just, there's so many great television programs out there. And some you can look at it and go, wow, that was really poor. That was so bad. I just could not watch the whole thing. I have a friend, and I met with him just yesterday. And I hadn't seen him for about 10 years. We were talking about film. And he says, I watch these, his son-in-law and him get together. And they watch terrible movies because they have to. They say, we have to watch these terrible, bad acted movies so we can laugh at the end of it. And they do. They listen, they watch these movies and they just go, oh, that's so terrible. That's what they like to do when they're together. But what I love is when I watch a television series or a movie or whatever, and I go, wow, that I'm going to remember that. That was touching, or that was beautiful, or that was so amazing. It just brought so many different feelings out inside me. I was that action hero, or I was that person. You love it. You put yourself in the position of it, and it's great.
Yeah, it's awesome. And you are a retired police detective. So what is the most creative way you've seen a criminal commit a crime?
Well, that's a great question, because criminals can be creative and criminals can be stupid. And I thank goodness for stupid criminals. People who leave their name behind or whatever. There used to be a television program on stupid criminals. Like, for example, a criminal walking in to do a robbery, and he's wearing a helmet on his face with a face mask, but on the helmet is his name. And he just forgot that his name was on his helmet. And so, and I remember one of the cases, we had these armed robberies. And I remember investigating. We had no idea who was doing it. There were 5 armed robberies, and we were investigating them. And I remember, going to one scene, and the guy, the witness said, well, he was running and he ran in this direction. And I think he might have gone behind that boat over there. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, thanks. So I decided to walk the path and to see where he was walking. And I went to the boat, and the boat was kind of like turned upside down. But there was a little narrow opening in which you can go, like crawl through. And I thought, I'm going to crawl through to see, if maybe he hid here. And sure enough, I crawled through, and his wallet was sitting there with his name. And I thought, oh, thank you. Thank you. Now, some of the more sophisticated criminals are the ones who really plan it and map it out. Or you get the cat burglar who scales the side of a building. And I was after a cat burglar who scaled high rises and was able to jump from balcony to balcony to get into these places, risking his own life. I caught him. I couldn't believe it. He was a cat burglar. So there are some sophisticated ways in which to do crime. And it just marvels me at some of the ways that they plan these things out. But I can't think of one specific case that really knocks me off my socks. But having said that, I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about how I used a little bit of creativity, let's say, to catch someone. So I was after this bad guy, and we were never able to catch him. We knew that he was coming into this one apartment from time to time, and it was a low, like it was low income. It was kind of like a very old building, and we were watching it and staking it out. We didn't know how the guy was getting in. We didn't know how the guy was getting out. We pretty much figured out that there was one apartment that he was going into, and every time we went to check on him, he was not there. And he was wanted on a number of different criminal warrants, and he was a bad guy. And so I thought, well, how am I going to do this? How am I going to catch this guy? Because we couldn't watch the place 24 hours a day. We just didn't have the manpower or the money. And we did want to catch him. So what I decided to do is I got a box, and it was like a fridge box, like a great big box that contains a fridge. And so I went in one night and I put this empty box a little distance away from the apartment that we suspected he was coming in and out of. And I just poked a couple of holes in. And so I left the box there for a couple of days. And I'm sure that somebody saw the box. And when I went in a couple of days later, the box was still there. And I thought, good. And so when I heard that he might be coming back to the apartment, I snuck in and I went into the box, and I sat in the box quiet, all quiet. And I just stayed there for about 4, 5, 6 hours it was. And then all of a sudden I hear the hallway door open, and I'm looking through the little holes that I had punched in, and they didn't know that I was in the box. The box they didn't care about. They already checked to see if anybody was in there, and I wasn't in there before. And so when he walked up to the door, I saw that it was him, and I was able to go in and arrest him. So that was using a little bit of creativity, and sometimes you have to be creative to catch the bad guys.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. And I love that story.
It was good. I can't take the credit for doing that on my own, because I saw that in a movie back in the 1970s. It was a cop movie, and they had done the same thing. And I thought, I wonder if that's going to work here. And it did. It worked.
Well, yeah. What do you know?
Why not?
Why not give it a shot? See if it works out or not.
If it doesn't, that's okay too. I mean, I was sitting in a box and, just kind of sitting there, and just, it was boring. But I thought, what if this happens? What if I catch this guy? I can tell this story later. Oh yeah, I sat in a box for like 4 hours, and I waited for a criminal to come back home. He came back home, and I arrested him. I got so many stories. Never mind. I have another story about. Okay, well here's one. The same kind of thing. I was a patrol sergeant, and we were after, again, another criminal that we knew was going to this one apartment, and he was a violent man. And every time, we didn't have a warrant to go inside the apartment because we didn't know if he was there. And so what I did, I thought to myself, I'm going to, one of the constables that was working for me on my platoon, he also had a part-time job delivering pizzas. And so I went to him and I said, hey, Mark, do you think you could get together a pizza, put your, pizza uniform on, and deliver a pizza to that apartment? And he said, yeah, I can do that. And I said, okay. So the idea is that they will open the door, and then you can have a peek inside to see if he's there. So that's the idea, because they will never open the door if it's one of us in police uniform. They won't do it. And so my friend Mark, he made the pizza. He put on his pizza cap, his pizza coat. And of course, he had his firearm with him and everything else. But he knocked on the door, and they said, who is it? He goes, pizza. And they said, what? Pizza. And so they opened the door. And then they started saying, hey, did anybody order pizza? And everybody from the apartment came around to see who ordered the pizza. And the criminal was there. And he turned around to his microphone. And he says, yep, he's here. And we were around the corner, so we ran in and we got him.
What was his reaction? Was he like, oh, I was expecting a pizza. Now I'm getting arrested.
Yeah, well, nobody had ordered a pizza, so they were kind of confused. But everybody opens the door to a pizza man. It's like, what? Pizza? And so you never open the door to a pizza man unless you ordered the pizza, because they could get in. And so they open the door. Hey, did anybody order a pizza? No, what's on the pizza? And so everybody was curious. And so the pizza man got the arrest that day.
That's awesome. I love that.
It was fun. It was fun. It was one of those stories you can tell and laugh at. Hey, do you remember the pizza story? Ah, yes, I do. I've got awesome. A lot like that. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Because you have to be creative. And again, creativity is a part of art form, right? Hey, how do we do this? And how do we get there? So it's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And how creative have you been when getting criminals to confess?
Confessions. Let's look at the word confession. Confession means, that you are admitting fault. What I want from anybody that I walked in to talk to is not an admission of guilt as much as I want them to tell the truth. So it is an admission, but I want them to tell the truth. I did not, when I say creative, I was compassionate. I walked in not to speak to, for example, I wasn't walking in to talk to a murderer. I was walking in to talk to a human being. I really wanted to make a connection with that person because I didn't know whether they did what they had been accused of, but I really wanted to get to know the person. So I would walk in with that inquisitive mind and to really make a connection with another person. It was important to me because people can be falsely accused of things and they're terrified. Even the criminal is terrified. And if you walk in a very accusatory way, or you try to trick them, it's not going to work. So walk in with compassion, walk in with a mind that wants to know, and just present yourself as a person who cares. And in that way, you're more likely to get cooperation. I learned two very valuable lessons as a police officer. One lesson that I learned very early on is that people are more similar than they are different. And what I mean by that is that we may have different color skin, we may have different religions, we may have different sexual preferences, whatever it is, but we're all from the same family. We're all from one race, the human race. We all laugh, love, and bleed in the same way. So when you start to look at people as being more similar to you than they are different, then you can imagine what it must be like to be them, to be in their shoes. And in that way, when you approach them, you speak to them the way that you want to be treated yourself. You talk as though they are brother or sister. That's the second lesson I learned. You get what you give. If I treat you with dignity and respect, I'm likely to get dignity and respect in return. If I treat you with anger and violence, I'm likely to get anger and violence in return. So why don't I choose to treat you with love? And so this is the way in which I walked in to speak to a criminal. It wasn't that I was using an art form or anything. I was using human compassion and human, dignity and treating them the way that I wanted to be treated.
Yeah, that's awesome. Everyone in schools always says that treat people the way you want to be treated.
That's it. It's such a valuable lesson.
Yeah, I totally agree. And what creative skills did you need that saved your life when you were a peacekeeper overseas?
This comes back to the answer that I gave you just a moment before. Now, I went to the Middle East during the Iraq War as a peacekeeper. In Canada, we didn't send soldiers to the Iraq War, we sent peacekeepers. And when I went to Jordan, which was my home base, I went to the Jordanian International Police Training Center. This was a police academy in the middle of the desert, the biggest one in the world. And 3,000 Iraqi police cadets would come every 8 weeks to be trained. And in those 3,000 police cadets, there were Sunnis and Shiites that were also terrorists. Why? Because Iraq didn't have a way of checking everybody out to see if they were qualified to be police officers. They were at war and they needed policemen as much as possible. So some terrorists they became creative, and they thought, you know what? I could get a police uniform, sign up to be a police cadet, and I can get into the academy. I will learn everything that they're teaching the police officers so I can use it. And I can also get a paycheck because they were paying the police cadets for attending. And so that's what happened. Now, when I went down to Jordan, to the Middle East, I must admit that at first I was very afraid because I didn't know how I would be received and how everything would turn out. But I remember those 2 lessons that I told you that I had learned earlier on in my career. I always wanted to treat people with dignity and respect. And so when I started my classrooms in the very beginning, I was a teacher, then I became an advocate and counselor. But when I was a teacher, teaching 60 students, police officers, and some of them were terrorists, I didn't know who they were, but I would always start off my classroom by telling them that I was there to share my experiences with them, that I was there to treat them with dignity and respect, and I was there to cooperate fully and to help them in their current situation. So I made them feel welcomed, and I made them feel comfortable. I used to be creative because I would start my classrooms out by saying that, and then partway through the day, towards the end of the class, when there was about 45 minutes left, I knew that a lot of them would be very, very tired because they'd been up since 4:30 in the morning. Imagine this. You have never been away from home. Never. Some of these men had never been away from home, not only for one day. It's a different culture. Some of them had never been away from home. They were lonely. They were tired. They were up at 4:30 in the morning. Some of them were not physically fit, and they were going through drill and all kinds of expectations. Then they were coming into a classroom that was hot in the desert, not too much air conditioning in our classrooms, and sitting in very uncomfortable chairs for 8 hours a day. Are you kidding me? That's so hard. Imagine yourself 8 hours in an air-conditioned classroom. It's not always easy. Your bum hurts. You start to, I can't wait to get up, all this kind of stuff. And I don't like it. And I can't wait for recess. We didn't have recess. We had a couple of breaks, but we didn't have recess. So I would end each day by saying, here it goes. Who here knows how to sing and tell stories? And then the cadets would go, what? What did you say? I said, who here can sing and tell stories? I'm going to take the next 45 minutes to invite anybody who wants to sing or tell stories. Let's have fun at the end of the day. And I started this right from the very beginning. Wow, did they ever love it? At first, when I asked that question, only a couple of them would slowly raise their hands, and then they would start to sing, Avni. They would sing these beautiful songs, and everybody was so enjoying it. So imagine this classroom. We had Sunnis, Shiites, and terrorists laughing, singing, and getting along together. And those empty jugs of 5-gallon, those blue jugs of water that we had tons of them in the back. And they would take these empty jugs, and some of the cadets would play the drums. And it was so beautiful. So we had this expression of song and drums and applause and laughter. It was beautiful expression of just connection. So we left all the war behind. Nobody was worried about the war in that 45 minutes that we sang and we played. And then they would tell stories. And I had to have an interpreter, an Arabic interpreter, a Jordanian interpreter, tell me what was going on. And I remember one story, everybody was laughing. And I said, what are they laughing about? And they told me the story, and it was hilarious. It was all about how this one cadet had never seen his wife because she was completely covered. And on their wedding night, when she took off her veil, she looked like a goat. And he was talking about the story, and everybody was laughing. And so it was just one of those tender moments that we all dropped our worries and our fears behind because we collectively got together in song and story. That's what art is about. It is about reaching those scared people, those cadets whose lives could have been taken as soon as they left the academy. We could have been killed at any time in that academy because we knew that there was a threat. And imagine this, for 45 minutes of the day, because of art, because of singing, because of drumming, because of storytelling, we just left everything behind. Wow, that was
That's
amazing.
amazing.
Wow. It warms my heart even talking about it today. And that was in 2005.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. And it definitely shows how art can bring different people from different cultures, different backgrounds together.
Precisely. Beautifully said, Avni. Beautifully said. You're so right. It breaks down the walls and it connects us all.
Yeah, definitely. And art can be therapeutic and it can help people through difficult situations. So, has art ever helped you through a difficult situation?
Well, well, I thought about that question, and I can't think of anything specifically that at the time. I just knew that as a boy, I had a very mean dad, and he was very abusive, like physically abusive. And I remember like being beaten very badly, many, many, many times. And I remember having a sketch pad that I would go to, in the times that I wasn't being hurt. And I would draw, these things, and I would just kind of escape in my drawings. So that was therapy to me as a boy. I would carry my sketch pad around with me, and I would sit there and I would draw, and I would say, okay, I'm in this story. So that was my way of kind of escaping. Later in life, when I started to write my book, I never thought of it as being a form of therapy. But when I started to write, Avni, I realized that writing what I had been through, the things in my past, which I left in my past, and I still do, but writing them down brought some peace to me. And I now teach people, or encourage people is more the word, to write in their journals, to write their stories, how they're feeling in their journals, because not enough of us write our feelings in a journal. And if you started to journal every day, to just talk about your experiences in your life, that is a form of beautiful therapy. And I encourage people, I wrote about this in my book. And when I do talks, and I talk on a lot of stages, I tell people the importance of journaling. So yes, those were times where that expression was therapy for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm sorry you had to go through that as a kid.
Oh, you know what? Thank you, but you don't have to be sorry. Things happen to people. Sometimes bad things happen to good people, and bad things happen to us. But when I look back at it, Avni, not every bad thing that happened to me was all bad. And I'll tell you why. Because had it not been for my dad abusing me the way that he did, I never would have become a police officer. I never would have become a police officer. So that happened to me, but it also happened for me, because there's an expression that I like to use. I thought of this. It takes a villain to create a hero. I'm going to say that again. It takes a villain to create a hero. My dad was a villain in my life, but he also gave me the means to become a hero so that I could help other people. So not only did those experiences happen to me, I look at what happened for me. For me, I became someone who went on to help hundreds, if not thousands of people. I saved lives. I have saved hundreds of lives. I have made a difference in hundreds of lives, thousands of lives. Had it not been for that villain, I don't know where I would be today. I don't know if I would have had those experiences. So when we look at the tragedies, the setbacks that we have in our life, let's look at the silver lining that came from them. And some people say, I can't find a silver lining. You can always find a silver lining, because maybe that person who was that terrible villain who did that terrible thing to you, you'll know never to be like that person, never to say anything like that person, never to mimic. You will be able to help people to say, this is how I got through that. That terrible villain did this for me. They made me stronger so that I could share my story with you in hopes that it will help you to fix those broken pieces.
I love that.
Thank you.
That's awesome. And are you attracted to any particular artist?
No, no, I'm not. I just love the variety of different arts out there. And there's not one particular artist that I'm drawn to. I'm going to say, other than my daughter, Cassie, is an artist. She's a singer, and I absolutely love her music. She's got her CD out. And so, yes, she's my favorite. But when I look at the expressions of art out there, there's so many different ones. There's not one that speaks to me more than the others. There's just so much that I like to take in. So, nah, I don't think I can say yes to that question.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm the same way. I don't have like one specific singer that I love or like one specific dancer or painter or whatever. I just like everyone. I don't know. I just don't have a favorite.
I like that. Have you ever found yourself saying, "Oh, that's my favorite," and then the next day you hear somebody else and you go, "Oh, wait, that's my favorite." Like it's like a movie. That's my favorite movie. That's got to be my favorite movie. And then a week down the road, you're talking about movies. You go, "Oh, this movie, that's my favorite one." So we're kind of juggling back and forth. It's because it speaks to us, and then it becomes our favorite for the moment. Like, hey, this is my favorite for the moment. And then that moment changes because life changes. It's ever changing. And so your mindset is like, oh, that's so beautiful. It's my favorite piece of art. And then 5 minutes later, you're looking at another piece of art in the gallery. You're going, oh, this is my favorite. It's okay to change your mind. It just means that you're opening yourself up to all the wonderful feelings that it's giving you and the expressions that it's bringing out of you. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And do you have any particular favorite art form?
No. Again, that I love so many different art forms, and I'm being kind of introduced to different art forms all the time. And I never looked at something as being a form of art. What you said a little bit earlier about the keyboard or the computer being a form of art, I thought, you know what? I hadn't thought of it that way. So Avni, you brought another level of art to my awareness. And it's nice to have people make you aware of these different art forms, which you've done for me today. So I look at that and say, I never thought of it that way. That is a beautiful piece of art. Look at the lights. Look at the way this is designed. Somebody thought of the artistic aspect of this. You brought that to my awareness. So there's not one that really outshines the other. I'll go to, like I said, I'll go to a live performance, a theater performance, a movie, a song, listening to it on the radio, listening to it on my headphones or live or whatever. It's just so much out there. It's like, I can't just pick one favorite food. I got a bunch, and I got a bunch of favorite arts.
Yeah, that's awesome. And my Heartification project is all about giving back to the community. So how do you give back to the community?
That is a great question. Now, I look at the world as being my community. I don't look at just, my immediate surrounding as being my community. Yes, it is my community, but the world is my community. Why? Because I'm a human being living in this worldly experience, in this three-dimensional body. The world is my community. How I give back to the community is by going on stages and sharing my stories and sharing my experiences and sharing my knowledge. There is an application called Clubhouse, and you've probably heard of it. A lot of people have. It's a very popular audio application, and you can join Clubhouse and go into different rooms. And the rooms may be on art, for example. It may be singers, it may be actors, it may be politics, it may be relationships, it may be a number of different things. How I give back to the community is I have opened rooms on how to deal with those self-sabotaging thoughts that take us prisoner, those little voices in our heads that tell us that we're not good enough, or that we're not able to do it, or that we can't ask for the things that we want in life. And I say, no. We can challenge those thoughts. We can change our narrative. So I've started rooms in which I teach what I know, and I have a number of different moderators with me from all walks of life who also bring value to the room. And we invite members of the community, of the Clubhouse community, to come in and to pour their hearts out, to be vulnerable and to share their experiences or to ask questions on how they can deal with their adversities or what's holding them back in life. So that's how I give. I give, hours of my time a week to serve people, to help them to have a better life experience. And I find that I pour so much of my heart and soul into these rooms to help people. And that's how I give back to my community. One of the many ways that I give back to my community.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And how would you like people to get in touch with you?
Well, you know what? You can get in touch with me. Just Google my name, Paul Nadeau, or J. Paul Nadeau on Google. You'll see tons of things come up. You can reach me just by going to my website, which is, I have two websites. I have www.jpaulnadeau.com. So just a J in front of my name. And the other one is my Inspire Us podcast, which I'm giving back to the community through my podcast, just like you are doing. You're doing an amazing job. I want to point you out. I want to single you out right here, Avni. You are such a wonderful podcaster and interviewer. This has been an absolute delight to be spoken to and just treated with the respect that you've given me. So you're amazing.
Thank you.
So that's another way that I give back to the community through my podcast, which is called Inspire Us. And it's inspireus.ca. That's how you can reach me. There are forums. You can reach me. I can speak for you. And yes, that's how to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on my podcast.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Remember, if you want to find out more about this guest, please go to my show notes where I have all the links needed. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to my podcast series and help me by sharing it, leaving a rating, and a comment. I hope you join me on my next podcast. Bye for now.